This is the Aramark Powered Industrial Vehicles Safety Training. Next slide. Next slide. Purpose. This standard informs and instructs Aramark employees of the hazards related to powered industrial vehicles, or PIVs, in the workplace. Aramark's PIV standard also provides guidance on safe operating procedures, maintenance requirements, and providing training and safe work procedures for operating these vehicles, thus enabling employees to protect themselves. Scope. This standard applies to all locations and departments that use powered industrial vehicles. Aramark defines a powered industrial vehicle as any vehicle that's primary purpose is to lift, haul, or move material or cargo that is powered by a motor, either electrical or combustion. This standard excludes heavy equipment, automobiles, trucks, and motorcycles. This standard covers the following equipment, either owned or rented, that Aramark employees may operate: forklifts and other similar equipment, reach trucks and other similar equipment, pallet trucks and other similar equipment. Responsibilities. Inventory manager. If there's not an inventory manager at the location, then the manager responsible for the warehouse is also responsible for the PIV program. Monitor and enforce the safe use of PIV procedures. Assist in the determination of the appropriate training for specific equipment. Ensure all equipment required to operate PIVs are trained and qualified. Ensure that POV operators demonstrate through safe work practices the knowledge and skill required for the safe operation of PIVs. Follow all manufacturers' requirements as well as regulatory agency requirements such as OSHA. Ensure that all equipment has the manufacturer's operation manual available. If it is not available, contact the manufacturer or supplier for a copy. Identify equipment required to be in a preventive maintenance program and ensure that all equipment is inspected and maintained in a safe condition. Employees. Aramark employees are responsible for the following components of the PIV standard according to their level of experience and authorization. Operators. Attend the required training on all equipment authorized to use. Understand the purpose and the use of PIV standard. Next page. Perform the required inspections and strictly adhere to all requirements of the PIV standard as outlined during training. Operators and supervisors. Ensure employees or operators who operate equipment have received appropriate training. Evaluate and monitor safe and unsafe use of equipment. Ensure equipment available to their staff is in good working condition, and restrict use of any equipment if it poses any threat to employees, occupants, pedestrians, etc. Procedures. General procedures. All employees who perform work that falls under the scope of this document are required to adhere to the requirements of this procedure. Therefore, all employees are required to be properly trained and designated as authorized operators before operating a PIV. Basic tenets for effectively operating PIVs. PIVs must only be used for their intended purposes. Personnel, meaning co-workers, pedestrians, building occupants, etc., always have the right of way. The use of a PIV should only be performed by a trained, qualified, and authorized operator. PIVs must be inspected and maintained in accordance with manufacturer recommendations and any other expectations set by the inventory manager. Only PIVs that are in safe condition can be used. Load capacities must never be exceeded, and operating limits of the equipment must be controlled in a safe manner. You must be 18 years of age or older. Intended use and modifications. Equipment is designed for specific uses. For example, forklifts are designed to lift materials, not personnel. The same principle applies to all equipment listed in this standard. Equipment type. Forklifts and other similar equipment. Intended use. Lift and transport materials within the load capacity of the equipment. Equipment type. Reach trucks and other similar equipment. Intended use, lift and transport materials within the load capacity of the equipment. Equipment type, pallet trucks and other similar equipment. Intended use, lift and transport materials within the load capacity of the equipment. Next slide. Each operator should clearly understand the intended use of the equipment and have reviewed the operator's user's manual. In addition, they should know the limitations of the equipment. This includes load capacities, speed, stability, etc. At no time should an operator exceed the design limits. Modification to equipment is strictly prohibited. No equipment will be modified unless authorized by the manufacturer. This may include removing guards, disabling safety devices, disengaging backup alarms, etc. If any employee identifies that a piece of equipment has been modified, the PIV must be reported to the inventory manager or supervisor and immediately be taken out of service. Those found to modify such equipment may lose their ability to operate equipment. Pedestrian safety. Due to the nature of the work and location Aramark employees may be required to operate PIVs, it is highly likely you will encounter congested areas with pedestrians, which includes occupants and co-workers. Pedestrians have the right of way at all times. Always pick a safe path and, if necessary, delineate the path with temporary or permanent markings or barriers such as cones, tape, paint, etc. When working in areas with designated pathways, ensure equipment stays within these designated pathways. Do not place a load or park equipment in a designated walk aisle or emergency egress, as this will require pedestrians to leave the designated walking aisles and increase potential for injury. As needed, signs and cones should be placed in work areas that require a safe operating area for the equipment. For facilities with blind corners, the placement of safety mirrors at strategic locations in the space will allow pedestrians and equipment operators increased awareness of people and material handling movement in the area. Get in a habit of viewing these mirrors. Use the horn when approaching a pedestrian or turning a corner. Securing the load. Most PIVs are designed to carry materials. One of the most hazardous conditions that can exist is having an unsafe load. Only use a PIV for work based on the intended design. The user's manual should highlight the type of materials to be moved, how to secure the load, and any load capacities based on the type and design of the equipment. Below are some basic rules related to the securing of a load. Never exceed the load capacity of the PIV. Do not knowingly stack items that will tip, fall, or be unstable on equipment. This includes pallets and storage areas or racks. Use tie-downs, straps, or plastic wrap to secure the load. Do not use bungee cords, as they can break under the pressure of shifting loads. Next slide. Know the route expected to travel and eliminate uneven surfaces that could cause loads to alter. Fueling and battery charging. All equipment identified in this standard relies on some type of fuel source, typically LPG, which is liquid petroleum gas, propane, and or electrical batteries are the source of fuel. Prior to renting or procuring any equipment, understand the building requirements for fueling, storage of fuels, allowable fuels, etc. As an example, in some cases LPG and propane are not allowed due to the increase of possible fire hazard or the additional hazardous emissions from exhaust. Below are basic guidelines for safe fueling. If possible, store and change out LPG or propane cylinders in an outdoor environment. Only change batteries in an approved, well-ventilated area. Battery charging areas must be designated in the building. The following personal protective equipment must be available and used when maintaining lead-acid batteries: safety glasses and or face shield and rubber gloves. An approved safety eye wash station must be in close proximity along an unobstructed path when servicing lead-acid batteries. Keep metal tools away from uncovered battery units. Open flames, sparks, smoking, and other extreme heat producing equipment is not permitted in the area while charging batteries and charging LPG propane cylinders. Battery leads must be free from exposed wiring and be securely affixed when charging. Do not charge batteries or make connections where there is standing water. Battery watering systems can be installed to improve safety and save time. Consider installing a single point watering system manufactured by Flowrite, and you can contact Crown for details. Inspections and review. Pre-use inspections. Operators of PIVs must complete a pre-use inspection of equipment prior to beginning each work shift. The inspection checklist will include the criteria provided by the manufacturer or using the checklist located in the appendix section of this standard. A completed checklist must be turned in to the operator's supervisor on a weekly basis and whenever there are any defects on the service equipment that require corrective action. The pre-use inspection forms will be periodically reviewed by the inventory manager to ensure the forms are being thoroughly and consistently completed. Annual and periodic inspections. Next slide. The vendor for annual inspection services is your local Crown dealer. At a minimum, annual equipment inspections will be performed for all PIVs. These inspections must be completed by a qualified person. The inventory manager will determine the appropriate qualifications based on type of PIV in the inventory. Annual inspections for rented equipment should be a condition of the service contract. Verify what inspections are required and part of the service contract. Periodic inspections may be more frequent than annual and are dependent on the level of wear and use on the equipment recommended by manufacturer's inspection frequency or other factors. The inventory manager will make this determination. The inventory manager or designee will determine whether a deficiency requires the equipment to be removed from service until it has been repaired. Preventive maintenance. The inventory manager must develop a preventive maintenance schedule for all PIVs based on the equipment manufacturer's instructions concerning inspections and maintenance. The vendor for preventive maintenance service is your local Crown dealer. The inventory manager is responsible for developing an effective system of tracking the assignment and completion of preventive maintenance in accordance with the schedule. Records of all inspections, maintenance, and repairs of PIVs must be maintained by the inventory manager except for daily pre-use inspection forms. Records should be maintained in a manner that enables the inventory manager or others to determine whether preventive maintenance was performed as required for each PIV. Out of service. Any PIV which is not operational or is damaged to the extent it could cause additional safety concerns must be removed from service. Operators have the ultimate responsibility of understanding the equipment and ensuring it is not used. The determination to take a piece of equipment out of service can be made during the pre-use inspection or when identified by anyone who is operating the equipment. An out-of-service placard must be placed on the equipment in a conspicuous location so others can clearly see it is out of service. The operator supervisor will determine whether the defect requires the equipment to be immediately removed from service until it has been repaired. An out-of-service placard can be found in the appendix. Once tagged out of service, a work order should be initiated. Depending on the type of repair required, an outside vendor may be required to perform the repair. The inventory manager or designee will make the determination regarding the type of repairs needed and who is qualified to perform the repairs. Next slide.